Good rainy morning to everybody. This is just liquid sunshine, as we call it down in Florida. So welcome. Glad you're here. Glad you're here to be a part of this. Such is the nature of life, that all it asks and all it wants is the opportunity to appear. You're that opportunity, and so am I, and so it is. Join me in an opening, centering kind of treatment. So I establish in my consciousness right here, right now, that I am where I am. That I am in this place. My mind is here, my heart is here, my awareness is here, and I reach beyond that. I recognize that there is one power and I am an expression of it. And as I bring that one power to focus right now in me, as me, I listen within for the best ideas, for the greatest thoughts, and for new direction or guidance that I may have been looking for. I open to the idea that there is a goodness within me that is simply waiting to be expressed in a greater and greater way. This is the truth. I let it be, and so it is. Thank you all for being here. We're glad to see you. This is a welcoming community, whoever you are and wherever you came from, whatever paths you walked to get here, whatever trouble you caused along the way. My teacher often said, we spend the first half of our lives making trouble, so the last half of our lives we have something to do to fix it all. So whether that's true or not, we're glad you're here, trouble or not. We celebrate the good in all of us. We celebrate the truth of who we are, regardless of the outer expressions that we may show up. And we celebrate those as well. Whatever your gender preference, whatever your sexual preference, your ethnicity, on and on, those kinds of questions or those kinds of differences that people point out go. The truth is, when you're here and anywhere on the planet, you're loved. You're loved as you are. You're loved for who you are. And that stands and always will stand. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being with us. We celebrate that love, and we celebrate the awareness of who we are by reading together or looking at a core of idea of teachings that we really operate everything we do from these teachings. And you'll find them in the program. If you choose to stand and read them with me, that's fine. If you prefer to sit, sit. Here we go. I believe in one God, one absolute power, and first cause to all things. I believe that this power is perfect love, and it creates out of a desire to express love. I believe all thought is creative, and how I choose to think creates my personal experience. I believe in the unity of all life and the immortality of the individual soul forever unfolding. I believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of God to all. And so it is. Each week we have a spiritual mind practitioner who comes forward and shares a reading, shares a treatment with us, guides us in knowing a greater truth for ourselves. And today we have a practitioner who's also on our board, Doug Moody. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Pride. Happy birthday, Mom, most importantly today. My mom is celebrating her 83rd birthday. I called her on the front steps right before we began, and without her and a lot of other things, I wouldn't be here. So most grateful for all of that. I got really excited about Reverend Bob's title of his talk today about acceptance, as we're in this theme and month of abundance. Our October theme. And no matter who you are, what your experiences have been, you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. And when we learn to accept that and start from that with what we have, we can really do phenomenal things. Because we have everything we need within us. And we come to the center so that we can be reminded of that. And in every single situation and circumstance that we face, we always have the gift and the power of choice. And it reminded me of one of my favorite poems, and I decided I was going to share that with us this morning because this poem to me has so many beautiful meanings that resonate this metaphysical teaching that we share here at this center. The poem is by Robert Frost, four-time Pulitzer Prize winner, author, and it's probably, I would think, his most popular poem, and it's about reaching decision points in our lives, and it's about thinking through the decisions very logically, even when something can seem to be so simple, and how when we choose and think from within and listen to that inner voice, the journey can be so wonderful. So please join me on The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. And sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could until it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, and perhaps just as fair, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had left them really both about the same. And both that morning equally lay in steps, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, but knowing how way leads on to way, I knew that I would never be back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere, ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. And I took the one less traveled. And that has made all the difference. And this is the point where we come to our affirmative prayer. I'm going to lead that in the first person. Ask you to take in what resonates with you. Relax, get comfortable in your seats, and know this with me. There is only one power, one infinite creator that is all throughout this universe and forever present in me, operating through and as me in this world. And I can never be separated from this infinite power for good and light and love, because it is always right there within me and each. All I have to do is call it forth. And I do so now, knowing that it will always demonstrate my truth, always offer me greater insight, and that when I act and follow this voice, I know that I am one with this infinite creative power that is God. And today and every day, I celebrate and accept every ounce of who and what I am, every experience I've had in the past, knowing that it has brought me right here to this moment, and knowing that there is even a greater idea that is meant for me to grasp, to recognize, and to celebrate and employ in every day of my life. I know that abundance is the truth that I witness everywhere in the universe around me, in leaves that are falling from trees, blades of grass that are on the ground, waves that ceaselessly wash upon the shore, clouds that drift overhead, and the beautiful clear blue October sky in rays of sunlight that bless and warm my face. And I recognize that with this abundance being true everywhere in the universe, it has to be true for me too. There simply is no other law. I accept that for myself and for each, right here and right now. I accept that knowing that there is something that is perfect and exactly what I need to know and hear, right here and right now, that facilitates my beautifully blessed and abundant life. I am grateful for this center. I am grateful for this beautiful teaching. I am grateful for all the mentors and people who helped me along my spiritual journey in life. And my heart overflows with love and joy and gratitude for it all. I and each are so blessed. And knowing that, I simply release my word into the universal law, knowing that it is always so. And together we say, and so it is.
You know, it was worth getting up this morning and driving through the rain and coming through the block streets to hear you read that poem. That was like, wow. Thank you so much. So I want to tell you about Matilda. Matilda was a 14-year-old kid who decided that at Halloween it was time to go to a dance for the first time in her county. She grew up down south in a really, I'll tell you this way. It was the county that every time the Star Spangled Banner was sung at a football game or a basketball game, they sang Dixie first. So that kind of tells you what she was dealing with. Her aunt recognized her before anyone else did and helped her get ready for the party. She had a great little yellow frock and a wonderful some wonderful little pumps, and then a hat that fit all around her head so that no one would notice that she didn't have any hair much. And she went off to the party in full makeup. Her aunt, who was a makeup artist and who had lived all over the world, kind of recognized her in a way no one else did. So Matilda showed up at the Halloween dance for the middle school kind of age people. And when she got there, she signed in, or went to sign in, and nobody recognized her. None of the adults recognized who she was. So she told them, she's Matilda, and everything was fine. Her excitement and anticipation was that because she was Matilda, she would get to dance with twice as many people. Because the girls would dance with her because they knew she was a boy, and the boys would dance with her because she was a really pretty girl. Turned out not to be true. Because as it turned out, nobody danced with her. The boys didn't know what in the heck to do once they figured out who she was. It took about an hour before anybody figured out who she was, and she very shyly knew better than to say anything, because then they would recognize her voice. So after about 2 hours of lots of punch and all the cookies she could wolf down, and conversations, great conversations with people about how uncomfortable they were and what the hell was he thinking, or what in the heck was she doing, the party ended, and off back home she went. She took off her makeup and she put away her dress and swore never to show up that way again. So Matilda was never seen for many, many years after that. And what Matilda decided to do at that point, because Matilda knew from her religion that in some way she was a child of God. Pretty dress and all. And in some way, there should be and could be a possibility of some kind of acceptance for her in the world. And if she couldn't get it by wearing a pretty dress, then she'd get it by being really kind and loving to people. And so she put that outfit on and wore it for many, many years. She wore it despite anyone else's treatment of her. Some people called her a doormat. Some people called him a doormat. And what happened, though, that we know from this teaching, that goodness and life expression and life expansion comes from our identity with Spirit, our identifying with God. And God, Spirit, life, whatever language you use for that, is all about givingness and producing greater love and greater life experience. So Matilda just kind of joined in with that giving nature. Didn't know that at the time. All he knew was that this was the best way to get through life in that place and at that time. Many years later, whenever Stonewall happened in New York City, he was there with his brand new wife on a honeymoon. Kind of an odd place to be for a honeymoon. But he was staying at the YMCA because that's where the Billy Graham outfit that was putting them up and hosting them had them go and had them paid for, which was a really odd and uncomfortable, intense situation, given the women and the men and all the stuff that went on at the YMCA. And then Stonewall happened. Stonewall, which was that first time that gay people had an uprising and said, no more. You cannot treat us this way anymore. And a bunch of drag queens primarily, though not all together, and I realize nowadays that's maybe a derogative term. It's not intended as such. But men dressed as women who stood up, attacked police with their high heel shoes and whatever else they could find, and ended up barricading the police in the bar. And Stonewall happened, and gay pride happened. From that, and all kinds of things began to emerge from that time. See, acceptance of what is the first step in creating a greater life for yourself. Acceptance of what is the first step of creating greater prosperity. If you want greater prosperity, don't refuse to look at your bank account. Look at it and see what's really there, so you know where you got to go and what you got to do. If you want greater acceptance in the world, if you want greater expression of your life, start with, who do you know yourself to be? What am I really working with? What have I really got here? I can tell you that I went under layers and layers of stuff so that I was well into my adulthood before I could even begin to guess what was underneath all of those layers of stuff, of what people told me I was, what others said you should be, what others said your guilt was, and whatever. It went on and on for a long time. But after Stonewall, it was very interesting. About the third day that the riots were going on, or the rebellion was going on, my wife and I came downstairs into the lobby and saw the newspaper about it. I did everything I could to sneak away and go down and see what was going on, because I already knew who I really was, but I wasn't about to show anybody that yet. And she knew who I really was, because we had an agreement about that before we got married. And she looked at me and looked at that thing, and I looked at that, and she said, "Don't you dare." I went, "Okay, you're right. I agree. I made agreements. I won't do it." So I didn't. I didn't go down to Stonewall. I didn't see any of the things that happened down there, although except what was on TV a little later, and what I've seen since in many movies and many stories about that. I hadn't yet accepted who I was. I wasn't ready to see what the slate was and the painting I had of myself that I could work with and go forward. Now, granted, this is a really personal story today, and I don't normally do this, but I think this is the kind of day I celebrate. So here we go. We'll keep going. And then somewhere between then and about 1980, 81, I ended that marriage, moved on out into the gay world where I had a partner, found a partner, lived well, and loved it. Began to accept myself in that role of who I was, who I am. And it was truly a great liberation time for me. First time I marched in Gay Rights Parade here in Atlanta, we walked down one lane of Peachtree to Piedmont. When we got to the end, it rained that afternoon. We all got under one picnic shelter. We had had a number of beer cans thrown at us and lots of epitaphs as we walked down the street. But we didn't care. We were celebrating who we are. Then we all went rollerblading. I wouldn't dare do that now, but we did. We went rollerblading and had a great time in the park once the rain stopped. No speeches much, except whatever anyone came up with spontaneously. Today there are going to be something like 750,000, 800,000 people down there doing what we started that long ago. That matters to me. And it matters because we took some steps to accept who we are. And in the doing of that, opened the door for others to do the same thing and showed the world how something could change. You know, it's like the human consciousness. We're all connected. We all share it. When the first time someone worked the 3-minute mile, no one had ever done that before. No, that's just everybody does that. That runs much. That's no big deal. Because once one does it, more find out they can. If one person can, everyone can. If one person can accept themselves for who they are, regardless of what anybody else says about them, doesn't matter, gay, straight, green, purple, I don't care. If one does it, the rest can do it, and the rest of us can reach another place of self-acceptance, and then we begin to know that we can accept others. We can take that kindness and that giving and that loving and spread it to a larger and bigger place. So that the whole gay pride thing gradually went from rebelling against something, fighting for their rights, for our rights, for the right to be, the right to have space in the world, to celebrating our lives. Now it's called a festival, not a protest. There is nothing protest about it. Every major company in the South, in the country, shows up with their group shouting and saying, yes, we celebrate who you are. I hadn't been to the one here in a while until last year, and I was just blown away by every bank in town with their group and every insurance company. And, you know, it took 5 hours to get the whole parade through Peachtree. 1987, when I was in the midst of all the rebellion stuff, I went to the very first March on Washington. And when we turned the corner down Pennsylvania Street, and I was way back in the march, we had filled up the whole area, the big green, the big area where everyone gathers there. And then we marched and came down Pennsylvania Street going back to where we started. From where I could see it stand at the top of the hill all the way to the Capitol was not street to sidewalk to sidewalk. It was building to building, jammed with people carrying signs and shouting and celebrating who they are. And I became an American citizen for the first time. People get so much crap about who they are from so many places. It is so easy to let all of that nonsense cover us over and keep us from saying who we are. We get it whether we're involved in any of this, whether you're involved in ageism. There's lots of ageism that comes at us. I'm more aware of that now than ever. There is a lot of stuff about women, who you should be, shouldn't be. Someone said my pink is about I can't even say it. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm out of breath. Yeah, about breast cancer. I'm wearing it because it's my favorite color to celebrate gay rights in. But it's also about breast cancer. We begin to come up with ways to say we're not celebrating breast cancer, we're celebrating women and the freedom from that. And the freedom not to define yourself according to any kind of cancer. We're finding ways to celebrate and honor who we are without any of all this other negative judgment and measuring and being against. And that's really important and really a part of who we are. Now, what does all this have to do with prosperity? It's the same dynamic. Prosperity is defined as the freedom to choose how you want to live, what you want to do, when you want to do it, with whom you want to do it, and in the style you wish to do it. At least that's how it's defined by us. I think Raymond Charles Barker coined that. some years back. And so anytime you measure if I measure my life and find myself saying, I can't do that because I can't. How many people go to restaurants without looking at the price on the menu before you order? You know, we learn, yeah, good for you, me too. We learn we have to make sure that we're going to protect what we have because we may not have enough. Instead, so then what happens is if we start off accepting who we are and what we are and where we are in life and how much we have, acceptance is not resignation. Acceptance is not saying this is all I got and I'll never do any better. You know, one of the most vile expressions I know is I'm on a limited income. You are never, ever, 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 ever on a limited income unless you have a limited idea of that in your head. Then it shows up. Then it's there. See, it's the nature of the universe to give to us and to give to us and to give to us. And we are out here saying, yes, I accept. Bring it on. I want more. And more is good. What we have to do in those cases is get past the idea that your income, your source, your prosperity is one channel or another. There are multitudes of ways in which the universe gives to us in our prosperity. And if we can open our minds to receive those, if we can accept that idea, then the flow begins to become bigger and greater. We can receive more. See, all that stuff people throw at you in these messages about who you are, who you aren't, or what's wrong with you, are like filters in your life that stop you from expressing the true goodness and glorious greatness that you are. And the same is true about our messages where money is concerned. We have all sorts of crazy messages about money. How many people resent rich people? Nowadays, that's really popular on television and other places. Sitcoms about the haves and the have-nots. I'm not suggesting you should do that. I'm saying pay attention to whether you are or not. I used to have a very different reaction if a Rolls Royce cut me off in traffic than an old beat-up Toyota. Still have to watch that. And then one day here in Atlanta, back years and years ago, I pulled into my therapist's office, and there was a really beautiful, shiny new Rolls Royce parked right next to me. I thought, man, look at that. And I looked in there, and there were McDonald's wrappers all over the front and back seat. Whoever had that car loved McDonald's and never bothered to clean it out. And I went, I'm over it now. I get it. It's just a car. And people can make it mean whatever they want to, but the truth is, you get to do that, and you get to let go of these things that say the Rolls Royce owners are different from the rest of us. And the rest of us, that is assuming none of you own one, and if you do, I want to ride. To jump back to prosperity, though, Tom Costa, who was one of the great leaders of Science of Mind up until he passed away about 10, 12 years ago, I think, he said when he sold his Rolls Royce, that was the last symbol of my poverty. Because he had to have the bigger, shinier, prettier thing to prove to himself and everybody else that he was prosperous and he was not still the impoverished kid he had been. So when he changed his consciousness, he didn't need to do that because he really would rather spend his money on some other things. And he did. He bought a really nice car, and he lived and took care of whatever he wanted to do, and it did not curtail his self-image or his money in any way, shape, or form. We have to get out of the way of our blockages to the income and the receiving of good. We've got to quit undercharging for our services. We need to start buying the cheapest in order to get the cheapest. My teacher had a thing where he said, he got rid of all the clothes in his closet and bought 3 pair of really expensive, beautiful, nice pants and 3 shirts that went with it. And that's all he wore. For a while. God forbid. But he did that so that he could feel rich and prosperous while he was doing it. Instead of that constant looking for how to save because he knew there wouldn't be enough. Ernest Holmes says, we're like people standing under a waterfall with a teacup. And if you've ever stood under a waterfall, you know that's a pretty pounding bit of water that comes at you. And yet, folks, we think so small. There's so much good coming to us if we open up our minds to the possibilities of all the other ways that prosperity and goodness and life can reveal to us. I told this story before, but I had one of my first practitioner clients here in Atlanta way back when I was a practitioner. He came in to me because he said, I want to travel the world. I want to have houses all over the place. I want at least a yacht on every coast, so in every ocean that I can go to. And I want to be able to do that with ease and grace and without a lot of struggle. And he says, what do you love to do? I love to cook. Huh? Okay. And he was a cook. He was a chef in a restaurant. About 3 weeks later, I mean literally 3 weeks later, after we were doing the treatment, now we were talking about expanding our receptivity, he was called out to speak to a table that he had in the restaurant where he was cooking. And they said, this was amazing. I understand this was your dish. You put all of this together. Yes, sir. Our family would like to hire you as our personal chef. This was a family of doctors. Every one of the siblings, the kids were doctors. The parents were doctors. They owned houses all over the country. They owned a home in Hong Kong where they also had a yacht. They owned homes in France, where they also had sailboats on the lakes, or a lake, all down the line. He ended up being chauffeur-driven to buy groceries every day, because you didn't buy groceries ahead of time when you're cooking at that level. To buy groceries, he had his chef-driven. He had his opportunity then to be in all of those places. Sometimes he and the staff would take the yacht out because they just needed to exercise it once in a while, even when the family wasn't around to do that. And he had a rich, great life according to his opening it up to it. He had no imagination that something like that could happen. But when he said yes to the flow of the universe, when he let go of the tiny little teacup and got a bigger bucket, or actually maybe it's a big tube, like a great big hose or conduit that just lets prosperity flow to you and through you. At this point, I was going to ask you to help me sing There's a Hole in My Bucket, but I won't do that, because the good news is there ought to be a hole in your bucket. No matter how big your bucket is and how much you're receiving, there's a hole at the bottom to let you have more, because it never stops unless you stop it, unless you choose to believe that it's not there. So there is the divine expression of the divine love and divine flow is not locked or blocked at all by those surface labels and things that people say about you. See, there are no real victims. We get treated like victims sometimes, and when you've been treated like that enough, it can become your self-awareness, your feeling. You can get bullied. You can get hurt. And then you can begin to believe that that's what the world is going to always dish out to you. And the truth is, it might be a feeling, but as soon as you can release it to something bigger, any of that stops. There's not a privileged group that have special openness and availability to greater prosperity. That's just another way of a division. The privileged and the unprivileged, the haves and the have-nots. That implies that we got two powers going on, and some people have a real special knowledge of it and others don't. Granted, everybody starts at a different place. Some of us got a great start in life with parents that loved us, with great support, great prosperity. Some others of us got a rougher start than that, without a lot of prosperity. we're thinking of lack and limitation much of the time and being taught that you really had to focus on that, because if you stop paying attention to it, if you stop balancing your checkbook, lose track of how little you have, you'll lose all of it. That nonsense is nonsense. I mean, yeah, keep up with what you got, but maybe when you're balancing your books, it's about looking at what you have and not what you don't have. Looking at what you can do with what you have, how you can expand on it, how you can grow with it. See, I did a lot of work on myself over the years in therapy and in 12-step. And gradually, that self-acceptance and that acceptance of the good of the life. I remember the moment I realized, having been in this teaching for a while, that life was good and that I could expect greater good, not that I had to defend against all the negative stuff that would come at me. And that good is built upon good. Good opportunities, good thoughts, good beliefs, good loving, kindness. And we build on that rather than on what isn't or what's missing. Because all we can build on what's missing is more of what's missing. Makes sense? I see heads nodding. And I was in this teaching a while when I got it. And when I got that as a result of this teaching, that's when I discovered what life's really all about, and how no matter where you start, this life is an equal opportunity giver. It gives equally to all. It pours it out. It's up to us to receive and accept what is coming our way. And to pay attention to where we might be blocking it, because that's the only reason we're not getting all we want. Now, this may be hard to hear for some of us who've been through some rough times, who've been part of a class or a culture in this country where you did not get the same opportunities on the outside that other people do. But think about the people in your life and that you know of who rose above those limitations, because if one person can, everybody can. If one little southern boy from the South living in the swamp in Dixie County, Florida, can make it out of there and make it to here, then anybody can. What about Matilda? Whatever happened to her? Well, first of all, in 1994, went back to the Gay Rights Parade, the 25th celebration of Stonewall. Showed up for that with my beautiful, wonderful daughter who was just finishing college, and marched with me. We wore T-shirts that said, my dad's gay, and I wore one that said, my daughter's straight. She got interviewed by some folks and said, you know, I'm culturally gay and sexually straight. And the poor girl had to get over some things with that. She marched in the parade here. She was the sweetheart for the gay fraternity that used to happen. I don't know if it's still in effect now or not, but she was best friends with the president, so he made her the sweetheart. And she rode all the parades on the floats and things and had a great time. Took her kids. We used to take her kids to the Pride Parade because we could hold up the babies and they'd throw all kinds of goodies at us, you know, chocolates and beads and whatever, because we were celebrating who we are. She was celebrating who she is without limitations. That same year, in 1995, Matilda showed up again for the first time ever. She showed up as Miss Montana, all decked out with a big sash that said, so the biggest, ugliest cowgirl you ever saw in your life. Big blonde hair, little hat on top, little frock, cowgirl boots. Her own daughter didn't know her. No one knew her in the circles that she moved. And instead of going home unhappy, she went out with $100 in her pocket. She came home with $600 in her pocket. because everywhere she went, people wanted to have a picture taken with her or have them sit in their boyfriend's lap, especially the straight couples, or just showing up and speaking and singing and carrying on and being silly. The only time I ever saw my kid fall on the floor from shock and laughter was when, after about 15 minutes of looking and talking to me, she figured out who I was. It was rich. It was great. And Matilda was satisfied. She'd been celebrated. And Matilda has retired and never shown up again, nor will she ever. Doesn't need to. See, all parts of us are good and to be celebrated. And that opens that door for prosperity to come to us and through us with ease and grace and beauty. So whoever your inner Matilda is, whatever part of you you've been ashamed of or you've held back or you've thought no one else would appreciate, find a way to celebrate it. Because as you do, you're opening a bigger door for goodness, for life, and grace to come to you. And that's the truth. And so it is. Thank you. So now let's take a few moments. Let's contemplate a minute or two who we really are. A nice deep breath and settling into this place and this moment at this time. When the infinite, in its wisdom and kindness and goodness, decided on some level in some way to take shape and form. First it was just in the ethers and it was just energy and idea and thought, but as it came together and decided to be something in form, it decided to be you. Over the centuries, as humans have developed, it brought you into the world. A perfect, divine, spiritual being. All of your parts present, everything working. And then it set you free to find out who you really are. It set you free to discover your connection with that one. It set you free to celebrate all of the parts of you. And so I know that there's one power, there's one light, there's one life. And it shows up in great goodness, individually as each of us. Our uniqueness is its best, highest, greatest achievement. Not our sameness. Our unique gifts, our unique possibilities, our unique desires and joys are its best expression of who we are and as we are. Any thoughts, beliefs, or ideas that we may carry that we are less than a divine expression of spirit, that we are less than the goodness of life, that we are less than worthy, lovable, loving. Any such nonsense is nonsense, and it's just something trying to come out of the nothingness to give us a chance to find out how wonderful we truly are. And so we send it back. We dissolve it. We let it go. For it isn't anything to begin with. And this amazing power offers each of us unlimited supply of goodness. And right now, by action of this treatment, I open my heart, my head, my mind, my experience to receive even greater prosperity than I ever had before. Prosperity of love, a prosperity of relationships, a prosperity of goodness of all kinds, a prosperity of money, and resources. All that I see belongs to me if I accept it as such. All that I am is an expression of God. And I accept it as such right now. I am no less, I am nothing less. Knowing this to be so, I am so grateful. Grateful that I had enough sense to pay attention. Grateful that spirituality has shown up in my life and others' lives from the very simple, small, yet powerful piece of kindness, of love, of acceptance. Expanding and growing into this awareness of what life really is and what truth is about and where we each live and how we can live so freely. In that gratitude that I live in an abundant universe that supplies everything I can receive and more, and gratitude that I've had the good sense to pay attention to it. In that gratitude, I can release this now, knowing it is complete for now. It is done. It is so. I let it be, and so it is. Thank you. Deep breath. All right. So part of that whole business, and I intended to use the word more than I did, which is circulation. Circulation is what prosperity is all about. We accept and receive, but we also give. We give in love, and we give in joy, and we give in kindness, and we give in faith, and we receive in kind. So I invite you to give. If you're having a challenge with finances right now, give a tiny bit more and watch it expand. Not out of fear, but out of joy, out of love. If there's an area in your life that you feel something is being withheld, give a little more in that space, in that place, and allow it to multiply and come forward. If you will join me in reading our affirmation of prosperity, which says much of what I just did. I live in a universe of abundance. As I freely and joyfully give, I join in the divine flow, and all that I share with life returns to me multiplied abundantly, and so it is. Thank you. We have a few announcements. You've seen them up here already this morning, and you'll see them again maybe, I think, coming up while I talk. If they don't, that's okay. Just reminding you that immediately following the celebration today, we do have a workshop. Why don't you come up and tell us what it is? Thank you. 45 minutes can change your life. So, yes, and it will happen right here, and Doug will be leading it. I will be chasing my granddaughter and hanging out in the back, so it'll be fun. Another announcement that is, next week, let me get there first. We have two more workshops following the celebration. One on the 20th to 27th. It is part 1 and part 2 of the keys to prosperity. And I think she said there are 3 of those. And Tracy SmartSuite will do that. And will lead that. In today's workshop and in those workshops, you will have the opportunity to give according to the value received. If you receive a lot from the workshop, then you get a chance to give. Also next week, there will be the opportunity we will have food for you for that workshop. Today, we're going to, you just let your tummy growls, unless you got something with you, and we'll start right here and do it up front because we didn't get the food for today. What else? So that's it about the workshops. I need to let you know first of all, every Sunday at 10 o'clock, we have a discussion group on the Science of Mind textbook and principles. That happens, it's led by a practitioner. We have an assigned reading so that you read all through the week, a few minutes every day from the book. And by the end of this year, we will have read through the entire thing for those who are doing each day. So for you, please, if you'd like to, come back next week at 10:30, there's a meditation. There's something new starting in November, and I want to just give you a telescope of it today. And we'll have all of the details available the next 2 weeks in print, as well as on the website. We are changing our parking policy with the parking folks here. We figured out that we're spending about $35 a car to park our cars back there because we rent the entire parking lot. So starting in 2 weeks, we will have a code for you, and I'm not yet sure the exact mechanics of this, but everyone who comes to our center, everyone who's coming here for the celebration will have a code, and you won't pay for parking. You'll have free parking just like you have now. You'll just take an extra step of making sure you put the little tag in your car so they can see it. And then the other thing that will change at that point is it will only be good until 1 o'clock. But that should save the center a lot of money because that's $5 a car to park charged to the center rather than what we're doing now. So we're looking to just make this a little more reasonable with our stewardship of the resources that you give us. So like I said, we'll have a full disclosure written part to go with it next week and by next week, if not sooner, once we have all the details worked out. But I wanted to give you a heads up as soon as we can. That's starting in November. You don't have to worry about it. The rest of this month, we have the spaces until 2 o'clock. And so enjoy, run, grab your brunch, and come back, and or not. It's up to you. You can't get through much of the parade by 2 o'clock if you want to do that, but you can get a glimpse at the beginning at least if you want to do that as well. The only other announcements, I don't think we have any. I want to say thank you to all of the wonderful volunteers that make this happen. I don't get to do this. They're not here now, so I'll just name them, but one day soon we're going to get all the children's workers in here and the children's volunteers, because we have a group of adults who take care of our children every week. We have a kids program that is phenomenal. My granddaughter is here with me today because she begs to come every week, and sometimes we can get her parents can get her here, and sometimes they can't. And most of the kids who come to this program give their parents trouble to get them here. So it's a wonderful program. If you've got kids, grandkids, neighbors that you can borrow, feel free to bring them on and bring them for that program. And I'm so grateful to the volunteers who do it. Thank you to the volunteers who usher, who do all of the things that it takes to run this place, to Vance for running our sound system and making us look better and better and better all the time, to what was your name again? To Doug for his contribution of the slides and putting all of this together to bring us into the 21st century, which is pretty cool. And give you a place to read as well as listen, because not everybody are auditory, some of you are visuals. Also want to thank the practitioners who are the consciousness anchor of this group. You are the ones whose minds and consciousness and thoughts about us hold us together and support individuals as well. Practitioners, I would like for you to stand, please, so we can recognize you. We have some here today. Woo! And the furthest back one is the practitioner who's in charge of our care program, care ministry. She is the one to contact, and it's all on the website. It's also on a flyer out front. If you have needs, or if you know of someone who needs our support, our care, then she is the person to contact, and she'll take care of things from there. If you're just looking for an individual, not just, but when you're looking for an individual practitioner session or treatment for yourself, then any of the practitioners would be the persons to contact. I think that's it that I can think of.